What a round 3 it was. We certainly do have some compelling issues to talk about. To kick things off, we've got Eddie Maguire and Mick Malthouse at war. We've got issues at Collingwood. Rodney Eade is going to come in and address a few of those with us. One of our panellists thinks that North Melbourne is the new Geelong from 2010. We've got Adam Goods in trouble with the way he approaches the footy. So much fun coming up over the next hour. Thanks for joining us on AFL Insider, along with Alistair Lynch and David King. As always, gents, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. As you said, very interesting round of football. Plenty to talk about. Adam Goods and certainly Collingwood's been a massive talking point on Talkback Radio down here in Melbourne.
And we hate seeing Collingwood in trouble, Kingy.
Oh, look, I'm feeling for them. We're all bleeding. It's a real shame, isn't it?
It has. Look, we're going to kick things off this week with what's hot and what's not. I'm going to start the ball rolling. I'll tell you what I think is hot. I think Andrew Carazzo is hot, and he has been overlooked. Everyone's talking about Chris Judd and Mark Murphy at Carlton. This bloke just does a job, whether it's a Simon Black or a Scott Pendlebury or a Trent Cotchin or a Dustin Martin when they played Richmond. He has been doing some fantastic jobs, plus picking up his 30 possessions or so a week and getting on the scoreboard. So keep an eye on Andrew Carazzo. Who's not hot? I saw the Western Bulldogs on the weekend. Didn't realise they were in that much trouble. And I'm sure that Brendan McCarthy's aware of where they're at, but they need to rebuild. They're a long way off it.
Well, I'll go my who's hot, and it's not hard to pick this one out. And Gary Ablett, he's a superstar, and he's absolutely
on fire.
You've gone
out on a limb there.
Well, what? You couldn't leave him out. He's had 3 times 40. He's sitting on between 7 and 9 votes. Don't you start. He's doing everything from contested ball, kicking goals, taking hangs, and he's absolutely white hot. And I think he might have started to drag the Suns up with him as well. Who's not? Once again, out on the limb, it's the Pies. In fighting, and some of the biggest names in football, and certainly at Collingwood Footy Club having the blue. But also the injuries are a massive concern, and they've got off to a slow start. So they're certainly cold as ice at the moment.
Luke Parker for me, a bit of a wild card, not quite your Gary Ablett, but 20-plus possessions in the first half. He was outstanding against Port Adelaide. He got the ball rolling, 5 clearances, and I think he's going to be the next Jude Bolton for Sydney, that hard, tough midfielder they love up there. And who's not? For me, I've gone Paul Chapman. Just some signs he may have been really struggling. Looks like he's lost a yard. He never had too many yards to lose, but just struggling at the moment. Needs a big game. Hasn't kicked a goal yet this year. So the Cats need him, and he needs a big game.
I like where you're coming from, although you didn't quite take as many risks as Lynchy did with Gary Ablett and Collingwood. I thought that was outstanding. Right? Kingy, there's been a lot made of the brewing war between Collingwood / Eddie Maguire and also Mick Malthouse. Mick Malthouse saying that the game plan has changed, and they're saying, well, it hasn't changed much. You have noticed a distinct change, though, even though the stats mightn't always reflect it.
Yeah, look, I've noticed a change. There's no doubt about that. I think that when you look at how they're playing, Nathan's brought some new things in. They're a bit more aggressive. We know that through not the absolute corridor, but certainly in from the boundary line. If we just want to have a quick look at exactly how we're going about it, you can just see here we've done some work here, Jason Lynchy. Let's have a look at the gaps between the two. And I'm not saying that there's the absolute corridor at the moment, but we want to show you the two styles. Mick's plan of last year and the year prior, and Buck's plan at the moment. There's the heat maps, okay? So there's where the ball goes out of the defensive 50 from either a kick-in or a defensive 50 counter-attack. Obviously, Collingwood going to the top of the screen here. First kick under Mick would normally track out wide. Out here, less risk. If it's turned over, still got an opportunity to defend. And if you mark that ball, then you can counter-attack up the side. Nathan, pretty similar, okay? They're in a little bit. You can see their heat maps are in a little bit. The X's and O's we've got here. The X's are Collingwood. Let's just say for the point of the exercise, that's a midfielder, and those other two are forwards versus backs. Yep. So Collingwood are the X's, so they'd be defenders. Next kick is where I reckon that it gets a bit skewed. Under Nathan, it's a bit of a, not a random event, but a bit more aggressive, as we said. Might come into the middle, might stay down the wing line, might go out wide. Under Mick, it was not negotiable. It was out wide. So, in theory, if you were the X there, the midfielder for Collingwood, and didn't think you could get out wide to that possession chain there, they would charge to the goal square. Okay, very aggressive. And how many times last year did we see Blair and Dane Swan, these guys, just kicking easy goals from the goal square? These other players, once the possession had left the area, had the luxury and the ability to come off their man and come and start getting the press organised, therefore keeping the ball in their forward half. Under this plan here of Nathan's, because they're not quite sure whether it's going to be turned over, are they an option, do they need to still defend their man, they're not quite coming off their man as early. So therefore, the press isn't being organised as much. So what happens in terms of the way you move the ball also can hurt you defensively. They're not getting as much stoppages in their forward half. Time in their forward half has dropped off. But I think the biggest problem has been when the opposition are winning the ball back in the Collingwood forward 50 and then looking to counter-attack. Under the old plan, they had the luxury of those players already set, ready to be aggressive and pick that ball off. Under the new plan, it's really hurting them. At the moment, they're the poorest in the competition at stopping teams from counter-attacking and scoring at the other end. Poorer than GWS and poorer than the Gold Coast. So it's a real problem.
It really is just a subtle difference between what Mick was doing and what you're saying Nathan's doing as well. And the stats might say, well, they're not using the corridor a great deal more and they're still kicking wide. But instead of that really wide kick on the boundary where the only option if it's spoiled is over the boundary, they're now kicking to areas where the turnover can happen and rebound very quickly.
Yeah, and we're not saying they're coming through the absolute centre of the ground.
No.
We're just saying it's in that 10 or 15 metres, and that was not negotiable under Mick. Under any circumstances, would they do that? What does it actually mean in terms of the numbers again? And look, you can make what you like of numbers sometimes, but these don't lie, Jace.
They're not flattering, are they?
They don't lie. You know, their game was built on forward half exposure, if you like, and the territory game. Get the ball in your forward half, lock it in, keep it there, and hold it until you can score. Last couple of years, best in the competition at doing that. This year, dropped off to a small sample, 3 weeks, but dropped off to 15th. Scores from there, 1st, 2nd to 17th. It's a significant fall-off. And just here, as we know, this is a really important stat. Time in forward half, best in the comp, down to 12. So there's some significant issues there, Lynchy. I think there's some real problems they need to address.
It is only a small sample, as you touched on, and those trends were probably evident in the NAB Cup as well. Do you think has it been a directional change from Nathan Buckley, you feel, or it's because it's a result of not playing well?
Well, I think Mick would say that if you play under his rigid game plan, you've got the predictability of your own teammates knowing where the ball's going. At the moment, they don't have that. Now, they're learning a new game plan. We know that. Their effort levels are down. We know that. And that'll all correct. But at the moment, when you talk about is Mick's plan failing, well, it's not Mick's plan. It's Nathan's plan. So I agree with Mick that don't compare what's happening now as part of his plan because it's not. It's different. Subtly different. But that's the problem that you play. And you have a look at the press ladder. So the forward half territory stuff we talk about, that's the press. There's the scores from turnovers in your forward half. Now, at the moment, Collingwood are 17th in the competition. At the moment. Small sample size, we know, 3 games, and this will correct. But I can guarantee you one thing, at the end of the year, that will reflect and mirror the AFL ladder. So at the moment, you can read what you like out of those sides. You'd be happy with the Hawks, having played some pretty good sides and really well ranked there. I'd expect the Swans to come up in this area as they historically do. But at the moment, that is what it is, and you can't avoid the fact that Collingwood well down the bottom.
There's some serious issues for Collingwood, aren't there?
Absolutely. But again, there's some key personnel not playing well.
Yep.
So does that result in these sort of issues as well? Or once again, is it because they're in the midst of changing tactics that is causing the good players not to play well?
All these things compound problems, no doubt. Great talent can get you out of any situation and great talent can overcome any style problems, really. But I think if you're going to go with a system that's for all talent levels, you've got to reflect that system on the scoreboard and what you're trying to achieve. And that's turnovers in the forward half, play the game where you want to play the game. At the moment, that's not happening. Now, you can make excuses for it, but at the end of the day, I can tell you that'll reflect the ladder at the end of the year, and right now there's problems.
I think the key there is that we've looked at it over a 3-week period, Lynchy, and I'm sure that Nathan Buckley and Collingwood will be trying to tweak that a little bit, and we'll probably see it undergo some further subtle changes as we get into the season.
Absolutely. Do you? How much do you tweak it, though? We're 3 weeks in, and we talk about West Coast Eagles working on their press for one and a half years. I mean, do you have to stick with it and see it right through? Or
look, we're not talking about a radical departure from what they did under Mick Moldhouse. It's a subtle deviation at the moment. And they might say, well, we might keep going that way, we might go further, or we might go back a little bit the other way. I mean, it's not that hard.
The one thing that Ross Lyon talks about is totally integrated football. The way you move the ball offensively has to complement how you defend. And I think under Mick, he had the complete model. That boundary line play, players could slip on and off the bench, come back on without missing a beat, so they didn't have to change the end of goals, all that sort of thing. And they were so solid at guarding space that I think it's caused issues with their one-on-one defence now. Now that they're getting caught one-on-one and getting beaten.
Exposed a little bit. I'm looking forward to catching up with Rodney a little bit later on because he's got a few...
Is he coming in tonight?
He's got a few curly ones to answer and he's not in a great mood when I saw him out the back before.
So you can start. He's a good mate of yours, so you can open with the first question. You guys actually, were commentary for the Geelong North Melbourne game. What did you notice from a Geelong point of view, before we touch on North, did you notice anything, were they greatly affected by Easter Monday's game, or was there anything else that stood out?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't want to take any credit away from North Melbourne. They were fantastic. But Geelong looked listless. They really looked like they lacked energy in their legs. There was no pace. There was no bite. They didn't really look like they were up for the super hard contest. And then when they needed to pull something out of the fire, they didn't have enough players playing well that could actually do that.
Chris Scott didn't give them an out. He said, don't worry about 6-day breaks. They've won 100 of the previous 120 games. There's no out for this team. They've been through all challenges before and they need to rise again. They look fumbly.
And I'd like to have thought they would have paid some attention to Brent Harvey at some stage.
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose we could chat about North Melbourne, and they deserve to be spoken about in glowing terms. They had a fantastic game against GWS. I think a lot of us didn't really take much out of that game. You thought, well, they were always going to win well, but they seem to be playing a brand of football that is very similar to Geelong in 2009, 2010, when they were the dominant side in the competition, and it was the way they moved the ball from deep defence with hands. Now, we know that Geelong has had to evolve their game plan to kick through the press, but certainly the way they've moved the ball, Geelong, North Melbourne, against the Giants and certainly against the Cats, was a lot back through the corridor, play on it all, every occasion they got the chance, and use their hands a lot.
It's interesting because while Geelong was using the corridor, everyone else was going wide. But they backed the ability of all their players. They would hit up in the corridor, and even if there was a contest and a spoil, they would get numbers there because they were predictable about the way they went about it. But even now we're seeing a little bit of handball come back in, and I think Brad Scott's spoken about where he sees football trending, and he thinks that the hand pass is coming back in as a means of breaking down the press.
Well,
and that's interesting because that's against what the belief in the last couple of years has been.
Well, let's have a look at the numbers for North Melbourne and compare them with Geelong of, say, 2010. Disposals very similar, and certainly percentage of handballs is an interesting one. Both ranked one at the particular times in 2010 and certainly now, 52 and 50% respectively. Inside 50s are both very high for North Melbourne. Once again, the Giants game is in there as well. And percentage of scores compared to times in the 50, and at 52 and 56. So they're operating at a very efficient rate once they get the ball inside 50 as well. And as you said, I think there has been a trend to have to kick through the zone, and it was because of that manic press that Collingwood had, where they were up in your face and you couldn't stop. So you had to kick the ball, so you had the choice to stop them. And Hawthorn do that unbelievably well. Geelong do it well, but as you said, it's starting to evolve because there's not that manic press anymore because guys are kicking. So maybe there is space to handball and run.
It's a big call saying that north of the new Geelong, mate. You're going to have North supporters in a frenzy thinking it's the year of the kangaroo. Here we go.
I didn't say that, but they saw
it. My runny says, Lynchy says north of the new Geelong.
Oh, so it does. Must be right then. So, no, they're mimicking the game plan, and I think it's really interesting evolution of the game plan. There's no doubt about that. And so it'll be interesting to see how they go over the coming weeks and how sustainable that is.
Well, I think they had a luxury on the weekend. No Matty Scarlett in that back line for the Cats. Really, it created problems, I think, for the Geelong defence. We're going to show you a couple of things here. I think Drew Petrie played the perfect game. 7 possessions, and he'll be absolutely internally lauded by the coach because he dragged Harry Taylor out of the way, out of that defensive 50 as often as he could. See the ball, top of screen, Hamish McIntosh versus his opponent there, and Taylor versus Petrie on the left. He kept him high. Normally, when this ball's counter-attacking off the defensive half, Petrie would charge back to goal. But the idea was keep Harry Taylor out of the way, see if we can put lesser ranked defenders into really vulnerable spots. The ball is turned over here by the Kangaroos and they get the opportunity to counter-attack again the Cats. Doesn't quite work out, but Petrie stays high. I don't know what you think about this, Jace, but I thought it was clever coaching to give McIntosh a chance in the goal square where he's strong.
It is. It's also a rare breed of player who's normally a go-to guy, Drew Petrie, to sacrifice himself and take himself perhaps to areas where he knows he's not going to get the footy for the betterment of the team and for Hamish McIntosh, and I thought it was fantastic.
And now is when he'd be normally charging back to goal. You leave McIntosh there, big body, simple push out of the way and away we go. Here it is again. You can just see McIntosh in the square and Petrie about to push up forward. Centre bounce situation. So Drew goes back where he thinks the ball may come for a quick surge exit, if you like, and then he just rolls up the ground. It's really clever because it bats to your strength and it gives other players. You can see that's Edwards in the square there. Edwards and McIntosh had 8 shots at goals between them, and it's because of the sacrificial role that Petrie was playing. And, you know, we don't see this often when we go to the football, players giving up their game for the betterment of the team. You can see Bartel here. He had to be used as a loose man in defence because they were under scoreboard pressure by the Kangaroos, which is what I think the real disappointing part here for Matty Scarlett not being in the team. It weakened their midfield. You can see Petrie there staying there with Harry Taylor high up the field. He works his body onto him here just so he can't come back and be that third man in. I thought it was clever play and really disciplined leadership by Drew Petrie.
You'd like to think at some stage that some of the other players give Drew Petrie the same chop out and allow him to actually get on the end of it too.
Yeah, they probably haven't got the same opponent on them. You wouldn't want to do it every week. How would you have gone with that role?
I would have been a very good decoy. Would have got lost anywhere outside the 50. But
No, fantastic. And I mean, the same as what you were saying a couple of weeks ago with Hamish McIntosh, his positioning, very important for him to be the deepest forward and sort of not get exposed up the field.
It suited both players, didn't it? It suited Edwards, it suited Thomas even, and it suited the Kangaroos because their forward line become functional.
Also, we were speaking about a month ago about Adam Goodes and his technique issue when he goes in low and hard at the ball, and he's going in with his boots and he's going in with the knees. And obviously the suspension or the report that has come up from the weekend's game is something that we've seen over the pre-season, and it happened in NAB Cup 1 against GWS. Then he was reported in NAB Cup 3, I think it was. There's the NAB Cup 1. This is NAB 3 against Geelong, and he was reported for that one. So it's not a nasty part of his game. I don't think he's deliberately trying to hurt anyone, but obviously he's trying to get low and get hard, but it is an issue that has got him in trouble on a number of occasions these days.
Yeah, it's a real technique issue, isn't it? We talked about Daniel Wells through the whole pre-season, guys, and the issues that he'd had at the end of last year. He played with a blood clot last year, and it was undiagnosed until he went in for a shoulder scan because he had to have surgery on a shoulder last year. He come close to passing away. We come close to losing this guy. We didn't realise the problem he was at. We've got a feature we want to show you on Daniel Wells for the next couple of minutes just to see the gravity of the situation.
I remember the doctors and everyone asked me, did you feel anything coming on? And I just felt a real shortage of breath, and it's pretty intense. At one stage I'd come off against the Brisbane game and I'd be out of breath big time, and usually it takes a couple, 2-3 minutes and you're ready to go, but it wasn't the case. I was really struggling. I had some real sharp pain in my back, and I thought, this is a bit strange. And when I tried to take a deep breath, it sort of felt like a little knife was sort of stabbing me in the back every time I take a breath in. And
so we had scans done immediately, and they confirmed our worst fears at the time. And then it was really just a matter of getting further tests done and jumping through a few hoops over the next 3 to 4 days to work out the best way to manage the condition.
It was pretty scary when Wellesley told us of the blood clot that he had in his lung, and I guess you associate those sort of things with older people and not young blokes, young fit men, and to hear it was pretty scary how what could have been.
The worst case scenario probably could have just sort of collapsed and maybe even died.
We sort of initially went into a mode of just looking after Daniel in the long term and making sure that he was still with us. So it was a really worrying time.
When he said, people have died from it and things like that, you certainly put it into perspective and you think, gee whiz, it's going to be a long pre-season for him.
The blood thinning medication he needed to go on for up to a 6-month period precluded us doing any contact work with him.
Before most training sessions, the coaches run through what we're going to do, and at the end of them telling us that, they also say, Wells is going to be out there today, don't touch him.
Well, it's hard to touch him anyway, he's such an elusive player, so we're very comfortable with that.
Wellesley was wearing the green vest, as we called it, for probably, I think, the first 6 weeks of pre-season. Every time he went near the ball, the coach would probably pull a hair out because we don't want Wellesley getting injured.
Any kind of contact, pretty much I'm running laps. It got a bit boring, and it did get to me a fair bit. But I got a real good base, which was probably helped me out this year.
Gave us a period where we're able to work on some of the elements of his conditioning that we thought would both make him a better player, but also make him a more durable and a more injury-free player as well. So we sort of looked on the positive really and saw it as a great opportunity to make him even better.
The silky running Daniel Wells. Daniel Wells carving them up again. Can you believe it? Is there a pot of gold on the end of it? You bet there is!
Things can arise pretty quickly or build up over time. The doctor's still probably not 100% sure where and when it came and why it came.
Welcome back, Daniel!
There was some fears for a while that it could be a condition that did prevent him from playing. The specialist was very optimistic the whole time, so we were able to remain like that as well.
And that's one of the best of the day from Daniel Wells. Class.
Daniel being an athlete and a tough footballer, a little bit of pain, you just ignore it and you think it's just the way it is. Sometimes you're a bit sore. So he could have ignored the problem and it grown into something we wouldn't like to think about. So I guess it makes you think twice now about any time you get a little sore spot.
When it does get a little bit dark at times, you sort of think back and just try and have that positive persona and just try and be looking forward to coming and training. And the teammates are great. You know, my family was fantastic as well. So there's a real group effort really, because you really can't do all that stuff by yourself.
Tries to cram it, tight poke Wells. He goes off the Dan Tricks. That is gold class.
An amazing story, and it's more than just football, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's great the Kangaroos put his welfare first, I think. Yep. He's a great player, we know that, but he's a great person. That's the most important thing.
He's just got such good skills, and we know the way he delivers the ball and his outside work is fantastic. Critical for North Melbourne for the remainder of the season.
Oh, he's a great player. I think forward of centre, he's their most damaging player at the moment.
Absolutely. Time for a break here on Insider. Rodney Eade to answer some questions on the Pies and their big week. But before we go to the break, let's have a look at the first in the series of Powerade people, Adam Goodes.
Hi, I'm Tom Chadwick for AFL Insider presents Powerade People. Today we're catching up with two-time Brownlow medalist and Swans champion Adam Goodes. Adam, what attracted you to AFL?
I think what attracted me mostly to AFL was just the freeness of the game, the open spaces.
You've been playing top flight AFL since 1999. How do you stay on top?
You've got to be really committed to want to improve, and you can never see yourself as a complete player. I think for me it's just about evolving into a better player.
How do you back up from week to week?
I think the biggest thing about recovery is about listening to your body. You know, those extra recovery sessions, extra in the ice bath, extra stretching sessions, all those things that just make you feel good about yourself.
How important is hydration to stamina on the field and then recovery off it?
Look, I think hydration is a massive part of your recovery. I lose up to 3 kilos of fluid a game, so, you know, drink as much fluid after a game to really help the process of recovery.
What a legend, Adam Goodes. Keep watching Fox Footy and AFL Insider for more Powerade People.
Well, the Blues certainly announced themselves on Friday night, didn't they? But what about the last few days for the Pies? It's been played out in the media, plenty of infighting, questioning of a game plan, questioning players' loyalty to the coach, the ex-coach and the president going at it. What better time to get hold of Rodney Eade? Welcome to you, Rocket.
Thanks, Jason. I thought I answered all these questions last night on 360.
But the great thing is you get to do it with us now.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to it, mate. Fantastic.
Hey, do you buy into any of it? I know it's difficult for you, but it's been a pretty ordinary few days for a club that's been on top the last few years.
As far as buying by...
As far as being distracted by what's going on. It's hard not to be because it's been blown up into huge proportions.
I think the main thing is obviously the players. And from what I've seen is that Nathan's handled it exceptionally well. I think his press conference today was superb. He's dealing with the players has been terrific. He's shown great leadership. He's not worried about the outside argy-bargy or any talk. He's just focused. He's more disappointed with last Friday night's result and has certainly spoken about the players about rectifying that and the way we go forward.
So what's been discussed in public, has Nathan actually addressed that with the players, like spoken to the players about, look, you've read this in the press over the last couple of days, disregarded or whatever? Has he done that?
Yeah, he spoke to the leadership group and he spoke to the players, but kept it very small and simple and basic, and so there's outside influence, is that the right phrase? Outside talk, but that shouldn't impact the way we go about it.
How far off getting these systems and this new game plan right is Collingwood?
Oh, not far, really. The game plan's been tweaked, and I think Nathan said that when in the pre-season we're going to change it a little bit. And you spoke about the wide corridor and the corridor, and there's small percentages in changes. I think it's more our A, execution, and I think B, maybe the options. I think at times we've tried to make the perfect kick there, and it shouldn't have gone there. And we've got some big forwards and maybe going a bit short at times. So I think that can actually be tweaked a little bit. But I think that's not the major issue. I mean, I think you made the thing about the forward 50 pressure. We've got to get some numbers in there and be able to keep the ball in there. And that's been a focus of Nathan from day one. So that hasn't changed. Yeah. Now, the focus of that hasn't changed. The execution has. Yeah. And that's something certainly that we want to address.
Rocket, the issues are tenfold, apparently, according to Mike Sheehan on the couch last night. And the good news is we're going to look at those 10 issues that Mike Sheehan raised and Rodney Eade will address them one by one for us.
We've got half hour for this, Rocket.
Kicking
so
off at number 10, Rocket, the depth isn't what the Pies believed.
I think it's interesting, the media people, it's been we're 3 rounds in, we're 3 games in. The first one was a supposed good loss to Hawthorn, and at that stage we probably weren't as defensive as we should have been, but it was a pretty good effort. Won the second one, now we've had a poor round 3, and all of a sudden everyone's barking at the door. But
you don't think we're going off early, mate, do you? Huh?
Some are, I don't think you are, Jason.
On the depth? The depth of the list.
I don't think any team, I'd beg to differ, any team, if you had 7 or 8 players out of your best 22, that you'd be able to have the depth to replace them. And that's the day and age of the draft, and got list management, and you look into the future. So, but having said that, we're pleased with our young players. We certainly prefer not to play 5 or 6 at the same time, but we think there's going to be some good players amongst them.
I was just going to say, you look like you got run off your feet against the Blues. Is there a lack of pace? That was number 9 from Mike.
No, I don't think there's a lack of pace. I think we've obviously played. There was 2 or 3 players who played on Friday night their first game, so maybe match fitness is a little bit underdone. And I think we're starting to get some players back. We had some young players in the first round. I think pace is okay. I mean, Swan we know has got pace, Thomas has got pace, O'Brien's got pace, Johnson's not in at the moment, he'll be back soon. So I don't think pace is an issue in the team. 2
of those players you mentioned, Thomas and O'Brien, have come under a lot of scrutiny, saying their performance is nowhere near what we know they're capable of. How do you see their performance so far?
Yeah, I think sometimes you're victim of your own standards. Yep. I mean, Dale Thomas last year was regarded by Ross Lyons the best player in the competition. Yep. And I only have a look at Daisy's stats. He's probably not playing to that level, and I think he probably acknowledged that. But he's kicked the most goals for us so far. He's 4th or 5th in disposals and tackles. So his form's not too bad, but it's not up to the standard that everybody's used to. And I think Harry has played well in the past on Rioli and Betts, and he's been beaten by both of them. They're 2 very good players. I mean, Rioli's beaten some great players in his time. You have a look at the first round. Rioli had 16 possessions. We got 8 in the second quarter, set him alight. Harry played well the second game. He got beaten on Friday night. So he's probably a little bit down, but he's beaten by some very good players.
Has the whole defence lost their aura? Their invincibility's gone, isn't it, really? One-on-one, they look vulnerable at the moment close to goal.
Yeah, probably. I think young Keith's doing well. I mean, obviously Tarrant's out, Brown's out. Yep. That we lost Rudy early, who's played very well the first 2 games. So, yes and no. Yes, probably to a degree, but we're certainly comfortable the way they're going at the moment.
Coming in at number 6, Rodney, as we slowly will work our way through it, and I am loving this. Mike thought there was no plan B if Travis Cloke doesn't dominate.
No, well, we don't rely on plan A is to kick it to Travis. No, we rely on the structure. So there's Dawes, there's Cloke, there's Fasolo, there's the mids who play as the high forwards as well. So it's more the structure. I would think if Franklin doesn't work as a plan, people say plan B, but most teams, even if they've got a star forward, have got other players to kick goals. Yeah. And at the moment, I don't think we're kicking the ball well enough inside 50.
No Leon Davis. Twofold, I suppose. He's effective, his ability on the field, and would he have been here if Mick Malthouse was coaching?
Well, I can't answer the second one. I don't know, and I wasn't privy to it.
Just throw something up, have a guess?
Oh, I can make it up as I go along. But from what I can gather is that Leon just wanted to go home. Yeah. So I'm not too sure if it was a contract dispute. I just think he wanted to go home. I think he was just at that stage that he just didn't want to do the pre-seasons. Yeah. Now, whether if Mick was coach, he can convince him to do that, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know whether he can give him some concessions. I don't know whether that's the case or not.
He leaves a big hole, doesn't he, though?
Oh, he does. Yep. He does. But he's, he's got skill, he's got pace. But he's 31, 32 years of age. He would have been playing. It would have been his last year. We would have had to cover him at some stage.
Yep. We'll skip number 4 because that was pretty ordinary by Mick. But
we'll go number 4.
The spectre of Mick Malthouse. But we don't need to go into that. You don't need to go into that. What about the ruck situation? I think that's a huge problem for you at the moment. Jolly looks like he's really sore or labouring, and Cameron Wood probably not quite at the level yet. Still,
we thought that Darren Jolly was in our best 4 or 5 for the first 2 games. I thought he played really well against Hawthorn. He played really well against Richmond.
Yeah. Played against McCauley and Marriage, who's just finding their way, admittedly.
Marriage has played 50. I heard you pumping Marriage up here on the thing. So it was a great get for Richmond.
That was about his head.
I think only a matter of time before these 2 got to each other. There's a little bit of niggle going.
One's a ruckman and one's a half forward. I was just talking about the half forward, brother.
Well, yeah, in the ruck, was he playing the ruck? Did he?
No, not in the ruck. No. He's snappy, isn't he?
So no, his form's been good.
Yeah.
But he struggled on Friday night.
Yeah.
And you have a look at Hanson and Cruiser.
Is he sore or is he just going?
No, he's not sore. He'll play on Saturday. So he's so that's for 2 hours. And I think that's a quintessential point that. From Mike's point of view, he's had one bad game, Jolly, so it's prepared to jump on him. And I think that happens to old players. They have one bad game, they actually have the epitaph on them.
Yeah, I think we'll let you off the hook for the last couple.
Well, injuries was his number one. We've spoken about the players that are missing before. So I thought you handled it very well, Rodney.
Oh, thanks very much, Josh.
You've got plenty of injuries. We'll let you off. Let's get back on to the positive side of things. The positive was Carlton.
What are you talking about that for?
Well, you saw them firsthand. I mean, obviously they've really risen in everyone's expectations. And
They
sort
are
of saying
a fantastic footy side.
up there.
I think they've gone past Hawthorn as a premiership player.
Yes! You're guilty!
I wouldn't go that far.
Let's just talk the Blues up.
What about Carlton? Anything surprise you? I mean, what are they so good at? I mean, obviously their depth of midfield talent is very good, but Cruiser looks fantastic in the ruck now. He can go forward. Hampson's doing a job forward that we probably didn't really expect.
Those two players have really improved. And I think Cruiser's obviously came back from his knee last year and was finding his way. Hampson has really grown as a player. He's starting to catch the ball up forward and he can jump in the ruck, and I think that's given good backup for Cruiser. Cruiser is becoming the player that we all know that he could become.
Yep.
Their midfield depth is good. Their intensity around the ball, I think, is improved. Now, they've got speed and they've had run, but I think their intensity to put pressure on has really gone to another level. And people in the past have probably queried their defence, but it looks pretty solid. I think young Tui's become a player. Henderson's improving as well. Jamison didn't need to play down there the whole time on Friday night. So they've got a good balance. Walker's the only one out at the moment, and he's a very good player as well.
Yeah, Zach Tui, the Irishman. He looks like, I mean, we talk about some of the kicking skills, and Clark has got good skills for an Irishman at Collingwood, but Tui, I mean, he's flushed this from 50 and has gone 8 rows back, but he looks like he's really picked up the game. A rookie elevation, his attack on the ball, as you said, Carlton in general.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, Lynch, I love the way he attacks it, but if he collects beams in the head there, he gets 6 weeks.
Yeah, it wasn't a great example, because half a second later he was in a lot of trouble, but he looks like he's really come on. And good quality player. And he's attacking the ball here. Another one with beams again. But he's going really nicely.
It is. I thought his last 8 or 10 weeks last year was very promising for Carlton Footy Club. I thought he was terrific. He went past Russell, he went past a couple of others, and his form was really good. And I thought his ability to kick the ball but kick at good distance is fantastic. And I think a way to illustrate that, players who mark or a free kick 50 to 60 out will handball off to a Goddard or a Lindsay Gilby. They're actually handballing to him. They're actually giving it to him, who's played 20 odd games, and he's kicking the ball 60 metres, so there's real credit to him.
Playing beautifully now, Rodney. You and I and Kingy, we were all at Etihad Stadium Saturday night, and we saw St Kilda give the Bulldogs a fearful going over. 5 minutes to go. They're 80 points down, the Western Bulldogs, and a man that you know very well, Brian Lake, decides to throw a little left hook just out of frustration. I don't know what was going through his head, because it didn't look like Simpkin had done much to actually upset him other than tackle him over the line. And now he's having a stint on the boundary line. If you were still coaching when Brian walked into the rooms after the game, A, would you have spoken to him? And B, if you did, what would you have said?
I must admit, I've never seen him do that, and that's really out of character for him to do that. So whether it was frustration, whether he just wasn't thinking correctly at the right time, I'm not too sure. Normally in that situation, I'd probably ask him what happened, because I probably wouldn't have seen it live. But that wouldn't have frustrated me as much as some other things.
What about going into next week's game? You're starting to move the magnets around, and who's going to pick up Mitch Clark?
Well, that's the thing that'll hurt them. That's the thing that'll hurt them, especially with Morris out and Williams out. That's going to hurt them. So that exacerbates the brain fade, I suppose.
We will be talking about that a little bit later on in Match Committee when we look at Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs.
Want to have a look at the Ds. Want to have a look at how they're playing and what you think of their game plan at the moment. I reckon there's a lot of contested football involved in it, Rocket. They're using the ball long out of defence, kicking long down the line. We've got some vision here we want to show you. It's a little bit slower than what the Collingwood model you're used to in 2010 and 11, but certainly it's along those lines. I know it's all contested footy at the moment. We'll show some numbers in the moment that just show there's not a lot of reward for the Melbourne players to work to the contest and even work away from the contest, if you like, because they're not getting any uncontested ball. But I think personally, off the back of a really tough pre-season this year, I think this will hold them in really good stead for 2013. They're learning how to win their own ball. They're learning how to train like a solid competitive unit. You have a look at the numbers here, which will show how they are right now at the moment. They're ranked... last year they were ranked first in turning a turnover in the forward line into a score. This year they're ranked 16th, so that's dropped off. So their ability to turn or convert into scores is poor. Winning their own ball only is exclusive. They have to win a contested footy to get a possession. This year You can see there they're ranked 18th at uncontested possession, a huge gap to 17th, which is Geelong at the moment. Time and possession, they're not chipping around, they're not getting a lot of love from their teammates. They're ranked last as well there, 12% less per week. And handball received. So if they want to run and want to create, again, there's not a lot of love there. Ranked last in the comp as well. So I think the only way you're going to get a possession at Melbourne is if you earn it yourself and go and get the footy, which I think at this stage of their days is a great starting point. Give them a solid base during the pre-season and make them earn their kicks of a weekend. First year in for Mark Neeld.
Yeah, I think the way the game's going, though, everyone says that contested possession is king, is the number one, but everyone's doing it. So there's no point of difference.
Yeah.
The point of difference for the top teams, for me, that they're good at contested possession, as is the team that's 12th, 14th and 15th. But it's the spread and the uncontested possessions. The top 5 teams' uncontested possessions is way up.
So you reckon they're on the wrong tram doing that?
Well, if it's a learning curve, but maybe the balance between what they were the last year and this year. And I think the game is a balance between offence and defence. It is. You have to have a balance.
So to teach that, so project forward 12 months, for them to then teach that complete package, how long would that take?
Oh, I don't know the players, but I think you can even teach it now, can't you? I mean, their contested ball's good. No, they've obviously shoring up their defence a bit, but gives them players confidence. They've got to be able to those situations, if they can look inside and they can hit a free target, we'll take the free target, because then they'll be able to put some scoreboard pressure on the opposition. So it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
A lot of these are a consequence of effort. I mean, you can actually get your contested ball, but effort's got to be up. And I think what we've seen from Melbourne over the last couple of years, their best and worst is there's been a massive void, and I suppose their best hasn't been very high this season, but their worst, we see here, Morton, just the lack of second effort when defeated, and the ability to chase wasn't there. I mean, the ability's there, but the want wasn't there. Have a look, conversely, this is Mitch Clark, and this is really good attack on the ball, throws a couple of players off, hits a target up, assesses the situation really well. I mean, as you knew at the club, you might say he's the high-profile, big-money recruit. He should do that, but that is the difference. And that's what you've got to get from your younger players as well when they get a chance to get in the side.
Well, you've got to get that from everybody.
Absolutely.
And particularly when you're a young, struggling side. The one thing you must demand more than anything is effort. Yeah. I mean, you can't compromise effort. You can say, OK, we don't have the skill, we don't have the experience, we're still learning, but our effort has to be as good, if not better, than everyone else. And I'd be really disappointed with efforts like that.
And we spoke about him last week, that young James Magner. The fact that he's come in, got a chance, been elevated off the rookie list and thinks, how good's this? And cracks in as hard as anyone.
Yeah. Time now to check out the results for the CGU Unsung Hero. Of course, brought to you by CGU Insurance, proudly supporting the unsung hero in business and sport. And Jakey Batchelor from the Tigers has topped the voting poll with 46%. That is a landslide victory for young Jake Batchelor. Plenty of Tiger supporters out there. These were posted on the Fox Sports website. David Armitage has to be the man. Put his head over the ball, goes under the radar. That's from Blake. Marley says, where's Carmichael Hunt? Silenced the critics on the weekend. One of your love childs, Lynchy. And JK says Luke Parker is a future star of the AFL. I wouldn't be arguing with that.
Oh, he's on the rise, isn't he?
Yeah, good to see Parker have a very good game in PB at Amy Stadium, and certainly David Armitage has been in the system for a few years now, but he's one of those who's got to join that elite group in the midfield, certainly. I want to mention Carmichael Hunt. He was good, though.
He was good. Yeah, I knew you'd bring him up. We need to take a break. Coming back on the other side, we're going to be match committee, and it's going to be on Western Bulldogs and Melbourne. Stick around.
Martin's there. Now it's Grimes, Dylan Grimes, little one to Rance, back to Grimes.
Pretty shocked at first, the AC told me last night, and it was a pretty humbling experience to be recognised for this week's Rising Star.
Grimes terrific at half-back.
The more footy that we play together, the more sort of cohesion that we have as a back six. And every game that we play, we seem like we're gelling a bit better and getting more development.
He marks, plays on, runs into trouble.
Key defender Dylan Grimes is the NAB Rising Star nomination for round 3. The young Tiger played a big part in his side's 59-point win over Melbourne, at times playing on Jack Watts, Mitch Clark and Stephen Martin. The younger brother of Melbourne captain Jack, he debuted last year in round 3 and was given the massive task of picking up Buddy Franklin, affecting 15 spoils. He would play just 6 more games in 2011 before a hamstring injury finished his season. But an early NAB Rising Star nomination should provide plenty of confidence for this up-and-coming Tiger.
Round 3 NAB Rising Star Dylan Grimes of the Richmond Football Club. After the Tigers had a great win over the D's, they now have to turn their attention to the Cats. Now, the Cats will be angry this week. They're 1 and 2. They need to bounce back with a win. If you're coaching Richmond Rocket, how would you be setting up against the Cats this week?
I think they can take a little bit out of their pre-season game, even though the Cats had a few out. So the fact that they've played down there already, I think it's a bonus. And I think they've got to take the game on. I think they've got to take them on. I think the Kangaroos showed a bit at the weekend, and rather than try and be defensive and nullify the game, I reckon that you're able to get them through out the other side of the ground and through the corridor at times.
Absolutely. We'll try to have a look at how goals are built, and certainly from turnovers is a massive thing. 2/3 of the goals in AFL football come from turnovers, and we'll have a look at some vision here from the game on the weekend, and it is the Hawks and the Adelaide Crows. And what happened here is the Hawks actually did something good here, Jace. But a turnover, critical turnover in a bad position on the ground, but we see Jordan Lewis is out by himself, goes to the top of the goal square, could have been a mark, free kick in the end. Easy goal in the end, certainly made to earn at the top of the goal square. But this is what happens. Riley is back on the half-back flank on Lewis. Now, the ball's in the centre of the ground, and there's a quick kick from Adelaide into their forward half. A turnover again. The ball starts to transition off the half-back flank. Now, Riley's in a fantastic position. With the ball about 80 metres away, he's got that 5 metres in front of Lewis. Great positioning because he can't get hurt over the back. What he does really well now is leaves his man to intercept this kick. Now, this is where the problem, everything comes unstuck. He had a free player just over the top he could have hit. Lewis hasn't gone with him and held his position, and this is where the turnover hurts him, and it's a lay-down Mazaire from 100 metres away. Handball quickly to Lewis, uses the top of the goal square where they had a spare player, late Crows defender in, and easy goal. So
he did everything right, Brent Riley, until he torched himself with a poor kick, and then his man gets on the end.
And it was probably the wrong option. He went into the corridor and got blocked where he's had the spare play, probably by hand over the top. But that was good play from Riley, and he'd be really disappointed in his skill that let him down.
Yeah, and that's the thing today, that if you've got players who can make good decisions, and especially can kick the ball, that is going to give you a good chance of scoring, but it gets through any pressure at all.
You've seen a bit of the Lions, Kingy. What have you noticed there?
Well, the Lions, it's a strange game plan they adopted on the weekend, there's no doubt. That chipping ball around they were going virtually sideways across the middle of the ground over at Subiaco on the weekend. I'll tell you what, if you're in the Brisbane Lions forward line, you didn't get many opportunities to win your own ball. 20 inside 50s for the day, 3 in the final quarter. I'm just not sure this is actually worthwhile. To me, it's a waste of 2 hours development for your younger players. They're miles away from being really competitive in the top 4 or 5 sides, so I would have thought that they should have taken the game on a little more and tried to actually score and be in the game through scoreboard pressure the other way rather than trying to defend all day. It just felt to me like they were eventually going to break.
Yeah, I didn't see the game, but I obviously heard about it. I think in a situation like that, I think you're right. You can have a plan, so you're going to sort of stifle the game and take some time off the clock, etc. But there's going to be situations that arise that you can take the game on when you get to 60 or 70 out, especially even kick it to the forward pocket or the point post, and then you can have a boundary throw in, and then you can push your numbers up and squeeze them. So
they did that in their defensive half, not the attacking half. So
absolutely. So there may have been some discussion about maintaining possession in the back half, but you've got to take the game on. You have your basic structure and your instructions, possibly, well, it looks like, from the coach, but you've got to take the game on. That's where the experienced players have got to step up and encourage those youngsters to run and take a bounce and get it into Jonathan Brown's playing his first game. And I think Brownie, he covers a lot of ground. He's playing basically full forward in his first game back. He's running 15, 16 kilometres and got the ball 3 times.
He would have been thrilled, I thought.
He would have been pumped by the end of the game.
He got 3 times in the first quarter.
In the first quarter.
And he played 98% of the game. I thought he went off injured.
So he's running probably 14 Ks with donut, which is be really discouraging for him. But when they get him back, you think they could do a lot worse than bomb it long down the line, as we're talking with Melbourne are doing and Collingwood have done in the past. Get it long to him, make a contest. Just got to get it up there.
At least send out the runner and say, we're trying to get it down. You just stick fat, mate. You're going okay. You're running around well. All right, it's match committee time. We're going to have a look at the Western Bulldogs and Melbourne. 2 teams desperate for a win. A couple of rookie coaches searching for their first win. Rodney Eade will be looking after the Ds, and I'll be trying to give him a little bit of support. David King and Alice Lynch taking the part of the Western Bulldogs match committee. We're going to just throw a few questions backwards and forwards about how we might set up and what sort of problems we can create for each other. I think, Rocket, one of the first things we're going to do as Melbourne is try and stretch the Bulldogs' defence. No Brian Lake, no Tom Williams, no Dale Morris. We've got Mitch Clark. We want to give him some one-on-one contests and maybe a couple of other tools.
Yeah, I think it's a game for Jack Watts to be able to stand up and maybe put Stephen Martin in there as well. So there's a spare ruck with him with Jomar. So have the 3 tools. Even I know Bates playing in the midfield, but can take a mark as maybe another midfielder can go play at half forward as well. So
what do you do when we do that, boys?
Well, we're not really that worried about that.
You're not worried?
Not expecting us going to get up there a lot. I wouldn't be worrying.
I beg your pardon?
You should be worrying about us. And
it's not going to get up there, mate.
I wouldn't worry about that, old mate.
Oh, mate!
We're going to probably stretch it a little bit ourselves, and we're going to put big Wilfred Minson. We're going to start him up in the full forward line to start with. And we've got the options of Roughhead and Cordy as well. But it's quite seriously, trying to generate goals is the issue for the Western Bulldogs. They've turned the ball over trying to run out of defence. They look like they overcorrected last week with handball, coming handball out of defence. So, I mean, we're going to stick with that because our kicking hasn't been great. But we're going to probably have to push Cooney forward, I would have thought, Kingy.
And Murphy. I think Murphy needs to be released. And we talked about before, you need reward for your effort. They're winning a lot of ball, the Bulldogs, but just not getting that class involvement forward of centre. I think they maybe should look at Cooney, who's a very good full forward, played a little bit of that under yourself, and earlier on in the year. I think you could give him some goals as a full forward and some class entering that forward 50 and maybe make or work lesser players into the marking situations.
Rogan, I would have thought our defence, ably led by James Frawley, who I think is a star key defender. You've got Rivers, you've got Grimes, you've got a number of players there. I don't think we're going to get stretched too badly by a Bulldogs forward line that looked rather impotent last week.
I think it's going to be one of the midfield, and that I think the forward, I think our forward line can be an advantage, Jason, and I think our backs will be okay, but it's about being able to generate enough ball and quick enough to go into the Melbourne forward line. And we've seen the highlights before. If it's long down the line, it's going to suit the Bulldogs because they get some numbers back. They'll be able to generate some run from there, and that's where they'll generate. They generate on the rebound. So from a Melbourne point of view, we need to get the ball in quickly.
Can we win enough midfield ball to make Lynchy Eade's words before and said they're not worried about it getting down there?
I wouldn't have thought so. We've got Boydie and Crossy in the middle, and I think we'll do a really good job. And Griffin in there as well, and I think that's why we put Minson to the front, takes Frawley. Not going to mark a lot, but get to the front. We hit the front, we get about 8 crumbing goals in the first half.
Easy game, coaching, Rocket, isn't it?
It's an easy game. It's an easy game.
So we'll see how that pans out. Minson at the top of the goal square, Crumb goals.
All right.
What about Jared Roughhead? Where's he going to play this year? Does he play centre-half back? Does he go to full-back, Jace? There's another one from Match Committee. Is it time? I know he played a little bit in the ruck the other day, but we saw Kurt Tippett still take 6 inside 50 marks against the Hawks.
Yep.
He didn't convert, but if he had converted, that game was live. I know it was a blowout in the end, but when Tippett missed his goals, it was really critical times. Is it time to have a look at him? Just for 2 or 3 weeks.
I'm not speaking for the match committee as a whole, but my personal philosophy is I don't like to sacrifice players that I believe as A-graders that can actually have a big impact on a game in trying to save the game. I think you can provide other assistance down back. Jared Roughhead, to me, I think can be one of the best forward/second ruckman in the competition. I think he's brilliant. His athleticism, his ability to get involved and pick up midfield possessions. He's a clever player. I think he's a star.
Well, I knew you'd say that. Well, it's time, boys, for the Skoda Simply Clever moment. And this week, we will go up the road, guys, and have a look at Leroy Jetta's special work on the goal line here. Very classy, boys, as you can see. This Simply Clever moment is brought to you by Skoda Yeti Simply Clever. What a class act that is, Rocket. You love seeing those go through when you're in the coaching box.
They've certainly got some talent. Young Leroy, he's certainly got a great instinct for the game, isn't it? And that takes a bit of talent.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've got to say goodbye to you now, Rodney. You get to go.
At the stake,
I dare say you're looking forward to a slightly easy weekend and maybe a little bit more peace and quiet, but we'll catch you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
We'll take a quick break on Insider, come back and look at some of the key games coming up in round 4. 3 rounds are down, time to look at some of the key games coming up in round 4, and I reckon the St Kilda Fremantle game, just the simple fact that it's Ross Lyon returning to take on the Saints is going to be a beauty. And 2 teams that, well, Freo, I think we all believe they're going to improve this year. We were worried about the Saints, but did they bounce back last week? So I'm looking forward to the way this one pans out.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Highly talented Fremantle Dockers come over here. They've got to win games in Melbourne. If they're going to push for the premiership, they have to do it here, and certainly against teams like St Kilda.
I can't wait to see who Ross Lyon tags and who he doesn't tag. To me, that'll just show who he really rates as a serious threat individually.
Now let's get on with the next game, West Coast Eagles and Hawks. We've got not long to go. West Coast Eagles and Hawthorn. What do you reckon, Kingy? I mean, big test on the road for the Hawks.
I'm all aboard the flag favourites. No doubt about that.
The Eagles?
No doubt about the Hawks. We'll just go over there. Well, they take a full side. That's the only query that I've got.
I think they will go over there with the best team they can put together, and they'll be going over there to try and win the game.
How far's Hodgie away?
Hoping he plays this week. As long as he trains this week, he'll play.
Straight to the ones?
Mate, you don't run them around. You don't run them around with the Brumbies, mate.
So Buddy goes?
Absolutely.
Cyril goes?
Unless you know something I don't care.
I'm asking you. Buddy goes and Cyril.
Absolutely.
I think Kingy's got some mail here that he's not letting on.
What?
Are they definitely going? You wouldn't lie to us, would you?
Would I stand here and lie to you, bald-faced? No, not at all. They are going. But I wouldn't tell you if they weren't. Let's be brutally honest.
Absolutely.
There are going to be some cracking games over the weekend. I hope your team has a terrific weekend. And I hope you have a great week. And with a little bit of luck, we might see you again next Tuesday night for a little bit more of AFL Insider. Until then, good night.
This has been a Fox Footy production.